So what is monolithic architecture, right? You might be hearing a lot about monolithic versus microservices, right? So again, monolithic can be distributed, that is possible, but in a nutshell, right? So what is monolithic? Basically, you have a single instance of your application. It's a single, maybe executable or WAR file, right? So when you build an application, maybe application design is modular, but when you need to deploy it, it will be only one executable. So there are some key points you can consider here. One is like you will have only one code base or one repository, right? So you may not have multiple inside one repository. You will be having maybe multiple modules, but the overall application, right? So it will be very huge. It will be one code base, one repository. So that means you will have only single deployment file. So that is the key part of monolithic architecture. So you will have a single deployment file, right? Yeah, again, easy to search and find functionality in one repository because, right? So you can get the details easily. Single test pipeline, so you will not have multiple testing pipelines. You'll be, single deployment pipeline, single test pipeline. So your, deployment infrastructure will also be simple, and maybe you will have a single shared database, right? So I have given a picture of a monolithic architecture application, right? This is typically a Ruby on Rails folder structure. So you can see here, no, in the app folder, right? So all your models, views, and controllers, as we discussed, right? Models, views, and controllers in the Spring Boot application. Everything will be part of your app folder. So your model code will go into the model section. Views code will go to the views section. Views means like, that is your front end, and your controller, linking between models and views code will go into the controller section. Although it is modular inside, but that is part of the same code base basically, right? So, and when you need to deploy this Ruby on Rails in a server, right? So you need to take this entire piece and deploy it. Okay. So what are the problems, you can think about in this situation? Anyone? Do you think this is good, or there will be problems? Okay. So here is a list of some of the difficulties when we see a monolithic application. One thing is it will overload the IDE, right? So your entire code base is in one location, and when you want to write something top of it, you have to get the entire thing up and running in your system when you want to development. Second thing is it will overload the web container where you are going to deploy, right? So because as in when you give add more functionalities, the size of your deployable executable will grow. So definitely it will load your web container. Continuous deployment is difficult, right? So why? And similarly, continuous testing is difficult. See, you have one code base, and suppose you are changing something, a small thing in one part of your application. Suppose you are changing only view. You are not touching a controller, you are not touching the model, but still you have to build the entire application. You have to deploy the entire application, right? So it's time consuming. For small changes also, you have to deploy the entire application. Similarly, that will have impact on the testing also. So see, you are making very small change, but since it is a one it is coming as a one package to you, right? So again you have to do more and more regression, right? And then scaling also will be difficult, right? So you can scale it to some extent, like you can put more load balancer, you can deploy, same instance in different, VMs, you can distribute it, but still, scaling is difficult here, and your development will be always slow, especially for new joiners, right? Because one new joiner comes, suppose, he or she needs to work only in the front end, but when you know they takes the code, they'll say, okay, oh my god, everything is there, where to start with, right? So somebody should be there always, to guide them. Then you have to have long term commitment to a technology stack, right? So now suppose you want to you want to follow only monolithic architecture, right? So and you are following Ruby on Rails, and maybe tomorrow you have some requirements which Ruby on Rails doesn't support. How you'll scale in that case, right? So if you see that vision, like, okay, you don't need to have the need to change the technology stack, maybe monolithic can help, but uh, yeah, otherwise it is problematic, which we can solve using microservices architecture.